Hello everybody, welcome to Also Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already and drop a like on this video. I am trying to hit 100k subscribers on the channel by the end of the year, so your subscription will be much appreciated. Also drop a like, only takes 1 second, makes a massive difference. With that said, let's get into these hot takes. The Nets are not going to do a damn thing if they don't get a solid rebounder slash paint defender, even if Harden plays better. You know, I am of the opinion that the center position and a player who's strictly a rim protector and all that kind of like dirty work in the paint stuff, I think that type of player is less necessary as the game continues to evolve. We're seeing things like Marcus Morris playing the center position for the Clippers, for example, where I just feel like we're going into a game where eventually it's just going to be a bunch of wings. Like, I don't know that big men are really going to be as valuable 10 years from now as they are now. And it's not a matter of the position being less talented, because even back in like the late 2010s-ish, when the center position got kind of weak, where it was like Joe Kim and Marc Gasol and Dwight Howard were like the only really good centers. DeMarcus Cousins, I'm probably forgetting somebody else. Back when that was the case, no one was really saying that centers weren't necessary. It was just that the talent wasn't really there. Now the position is as strong as it's been since like the 90s, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that the value of the position is not changing based on the game changing. So that the Nets will not win a championship because they don't have a good rebounder and shot blocker, I think that's pretty ludicrous given the modern context of basketball. As soon as you put that guy out there, the opposing team is going to find a way to game plan to just ruin his weaknesses. The Bulls have a top 8 defense throughout the season. You know, I've talked a lot of shit about the Bulls defense. That said, I don't expect them to remain the 4th best defense or whatever they are after the Celtics game, because I know they gave up like 110 points when their defensive rating was like 102 or something. But I don't expect their defense to be as good as it has been early on in the season. I don't expect it to be top 8. My whole gripe and the whole thing that I bitched about was that the Bulls defense is not going to be bad. And I am very confident that they will be between 10 to like 13 in defensive rating, at very worst 15, which is not a bad defense. So I don't know about top 8, but the Bulls are not going to be a bad defense, as they have proven so far this year. The Cavs can be the worst version of what the Jazz were last year. He said Wizards. I don't know why I read that as Cavs, but he said Wizards. The Wizards can be a worse version of what the Jazz were last year. I looked at the numbers because I've not caught a full Wizards game yet. I've seen bits and pieces, and I know I saw a full quarter and a half or so. The Jazz, what stands out to me with the Jazz is their guard play, their defensive scheme centered around Rudy Gobert, and their three-point shooting. While the Wizards are much better defensively this year than last year, which is great, a lot of that is the coaching change, which I think has been the biggest difference with the Wizards, even though the personnel is also drastically different. The offense has been good too. They're both. I think they're 10th in offense and defense. They might be 11th in defense, but same ballpark. I guess you want to make the argument like it's a balanced offense and defensive thing, because the Jazz were very strong in both areas, and you want to say the Wizards are pretty good in both areas. I mean, I guess, but that's kind of a weird comparison. I don't feel like there's a direct comparison with that team, although there is the guard play aspect with Spencer and Bradley Beal. I'm not seeing it, especially with like Rudy Gobert is such a signature part about that team, especially with their defensive scheme, that I don't really know that that's an apt comparison. But Wizards are good, so shout out to them for that. PG is hitting a new prime and slowly maturing back to his pre-injury skill. I don't really understand this take whatsoever, because first of all, Paul George has been the best that he has been his last couple of years. Post-injury. Pre-injury, Paul George was much more of an athlete and more so used his athleticism more than he does now. However, I would argue that Paul's skill is better now than it's ever been. He's been a better player after the injury. Like, his best season came in 2017-18 season, right? Or was it 18-19? One of those two. Whereas the MVPG campaign, he averaged like 28 and was in Defensive Player of the Year conversations and was extremely efficient and one of the best shooters in the game, as he continues to be throughout pretty much all of his career. So I really don't understand this at all. Like, he is not in a new prime. He's been in his prime for a while now. The Lakers will end up trading Westbrook. Worth mentioning that we are, this take was from the 29th, and we're a couple games past now, and the Lakers with Russ have looked a little bit better, even though They had that game against the Rockets the other day. That was more of an instance of just a bad team playing good than the Lakers fumbling thing. Sure, there were rough edges there, but the Lakers' big three and Melo all had good games. So I would count that as a victory. I feel like a lot of people freak out too much when a bad team beats a good team or a bad team gives a good team a hell of a fight. Sometimes bad teams just play really good, and it's not even a knock on the good team. But I realize everyone's ready to dogpile the Lakers, so that's kind of why that was happening. But that said, I think the Lakers, as I mentioned again, they're going to start 1,000 times. They're going to start off slow. They're going to figure it out as the season goes along. I think they're already starting to make those strides in terms of figuring it out. Of course, a small sample size, but I think things would have to get to a serious extreme of dysfunction before Russell Westbrook being traded is even a conversation that's really had. Might be some people on Twitter talking about it, but like a conversation that will genuinely be happening within the Lakers management. Things would have to hit like DEFCON tier for that to be something that's even floated around as a possibility, because trading Russell Westbrook mid-season is a downright impossibility, at least very close to it. So nah, I don't think that's gonna happen. The Bulls don't need to trade Coby White, they need Coby White. I would not say that they need him, because they're obviously 6-1 without him. However, I do agree that Coby White should not be traded. Now, if you get a player that's like exceeding what Coby White brings to the table, then do it. But I genuinely think that Coby White, what he brings to the table fits with what the Bulls do now. A lot of my gripes with Coby White has been that his game does not suit the Bulls. And I said, even with all my criticism of him, that I was like, if Coby White wasn't on my team, and more specifically, he was on a team that his abilities meshed well with, I would not have any criticism of him, because his game has a specific fit, and the Bulls didn't have that in the last 2 seasons. But this year, I think what Coby White brings can actually mesh well with what players the team has, on top of the fact that they're just not going to rely on him for offense in nearly the degree that they did before. So if Coby White has a bad shooting game and he only plays 15 minutes, it's not to that drastic of a detriment to the team. Meanwhile, he can bring a lot to the table as a spark plug. So you're going to see me being a lot less critical of Coby White this year, probably, because I imagine he's going to work a lot better on this team than he did previous. The Miami Heat will be NBA champions this year. You know, there's still a couple of teams I'm taking over them, but like, really the only teams that I would say for sure was going to take over them would be the Lakers, Bucks, and Nets. I'm not so sure about the Nets at this point. The Nets have me worried. I think they'll be fine, but the runaway thing, not there anymore. That said, I do think the Heat have as genuine a shot of winning a championship now that they have had since LeBron left the team. So that's cool. Rashaan Holmes is big underrated. His top of the key floaters give me butterflies. Weird reaction to basketball, dude, but regardless, true, top of the key floaters. He's not top of the 3-point line. It's like free throw line extended. He has a fantastic push shot that like no one would know about if you didn't watch Kings games, which I can't even blame you if you don't watch Kings games. But Rashaan Holmes is just a very interesting player, and one of those players that I called them being good before they were really established in the league. He had a season, his last season with the Sixers, or it might have been the season right before he got traded, where he got like 15, 20 minutes a game, and he just looked so good in those minutes. Every time I saw him, I was like, nobody really talking about this Rashaan Holmes guy, but I'm promising you he's a good NBA player. And now he's a starting center on a team that's exceeding expectations. Speaking of that, the Sacramento Kings are looking like a playoff team low-key. What's weird about the Kings right now is that they're good because their guard play has been good outside of De'Aaron Fox. Davion Mitchell's efficiency is god-awful, but he's had the good games offensively, and then his defense is fantastic. Tyrese Halliburton has opened the year really strong. What is interesting, though, is, like, as I mentioned, De'Aaron Fox, bad. He's averaging 18 on poor efficiency. And Harrison Barnes, 23 points per game on crazy efficiency. So I think those will flip around. I think Barnes will get to like 17 on passable efficiency. De'Aaron will get back to his 23 to 25 a game. And the team will continue to be pretty respectable. It just feels, I don't know how to put it. It feels like the pieces are falling in place. It feels like the Davion Mitchell pick was better than we gave it credit for, because the 3-guard lineups are pretty good. I don't know what the ratings on them are, but I can tell you from the Kings games that I have seen, feels good. Like the three guard lineups, it feels like it works. I don't know if the stats will back that up, but it seems pretty good to me. So yeah, I like the Kings, and I don't know if they are a playoff team, but I think they can be a play-in team at the very least. But at the same time, you can say that about 11 teams in the Western Conference, and only 10 teams can be a play-in or a playoff or play-in team. So, you know, someone has to fall through. The Celtics should move Tatum or Brown. Well, first of all, I've seen this take a couple of times. I don't know why it's framed as Tatum or Brown, because you're trading Jaylen Brown. Not only is Jaylen the worst player, you don't have to agree with that, but that's what my opinion is. Even if they're equal players, or even if Jaylen is better, Jaylen has 2 years left on his contract, I believe. I'm pretty sure it's 2, including this season. So you're trading him, not Tatum. That's the end of discussion. Like, the contract means that you're trading Jaylen. That said, I don't think you need to. I just recorded a Celtics video before this one that's going to be out later, so look out for that. But as much as I think those two don't really help each other to a degree that you would like, to say that you should trade them, I think, is also not true. Like, they don't benefit each other's games as much as you'd like, but they're also worse off without one of them. So unless you're just getting back some player who fits flawlessly with the other and they're a borderline equal talent to the player that you're trading, if you can make that happen, sure, but that's like a fantasy. Like, the actual odds of finding a player who fits better with Jason Tatum than Jaylen Brown, who's also almost as good as Jaylen Brown, if not better, that trade doesn't really exist unless, like, Dame ends up happening. But yeah, don't see that happening. He insists on his loyalty constantly, and it's getting annoying to the point where it's like, look, I'm not even annoyed that he's loyal. I'm annoyed that he won't stop saying that he's loyal. That's a different conversation. Anyways, that is it. Goodbye.